From Fremont, California, this is the Smokie podcast, a production of the Smoke Signal, covering everything from student life to what's going on in the world in short 20-minute episodes. I'm Gregory Wu, co-web editor of the Smoke Signal, and I want to welcome you to our first episode. Today, we'll be covering social media with a debate by two of our staff writers, as well as a guest appearance by Mr. Bogman. Let's get straight into it.
Hi, my name is Gokul Ramapriyan. I'm a junior and I'm a staff writer of the Smoke Signal.
My name is Tavish. I'm a junior and I'm also a staff writer at the Smoke Signal.
And today we're going to be talking about social media.
Is social media affecting youth's interpersonal skills and their communication skills in today's world?
Yeah, definitely. Social media definitely affects youth's interpersonal and social skills because the number of face-to-face interactions that we've had over the years is significantly decreasing because of the ease of technology and how fast it is. Like, take for example, an interview that I want to set up. I have the option of just shooting an email to a complete stranger and I can just ask them, hey, can I talk to you this time next week? Versus walking up to them, giving them like a face-to-face pitch on why I have to talk to them next week. With the latter being much harder for people to do, and you get this skill from doing more and more face-to-face interactions. So I think that's why social media overall affects interpersonal and social skills in a negative way.
Yeah, so I think that social media does play a role in changing our interpersonal skills. I don't think that it's necessarily a negative thing, though. I think that in a world that is changing and is shifting to a more technologically based society, I think it's really important for youth today to learn how to use those new tools that we are getting from technology. And I think that we are shifting, and I think that social media is not necessarily detracting from their communication skills, but rather helping them learn and change in a new way. And I think that face-to-face, the decrease in face-to-face interaction is not necessarily a very negative thing, because there are a lot of people, as I mentioned before, who maybe feel uncomfortable talking to people one-on-one, who may have difficulty conveying what they want to say and what they're trying to communicate. And social media allows them to do this in a way that is eloquent and get their point across.
Yeah. So does social media provide enough privacy protection, or is it still kind of a risky thing?
I think that there's totally enough privacy protection right now. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but take for example this viral app TikTok, which exploded in recent months. On TikTok, users are able to monitor and filter out who is able to see their content, who is able to view their content, who is able to like their content, and who is able to comment on their content. So I think that gives a lot of people the ability to customize their privacy settings, and I think that that's not just isolated to TikTok. I think a lot of other social media apps, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, they all give users an ability to customize their privacy settings, which is really important. That flexibility helps different people tailor their privacy settings to how they want it.
Yeah, but I've seen, like, especially this year in April, I think you might have heard that Facebook leaked about 540 million users' data. So I think the actions taken by these big corporations, they need to step it up, because 540 million people is definitely not a small number. And you see, consequently, a couple weeks after, Facebook executive talking about selling this data to other companies. So the privacy, I feel, the privacy policies that these companies have needs to be a higher priority for them, since this is users' data. There's so much about you that's online, and if we're just like harvesting it to random companies, like, what good are their policies for them?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that there needs to be more legislation that protects users, especially, you're talking about Facebook. There was also the Cambridge Analytica scandal where people were manipulating privacy settings for users on Facebook and using their data for different political agendas. So I think that there definitely needs to be this kind of legislation on the congressional level. So the next question is, how does social media impact mental health?
Yeah, so I think what we see on social media is not really a realistic view on how people live their lives. You often see say for an example on Instagram, you see like pictures with their friends dressing up, eating like at cool places, but that's not like how each second of their lives are lived. You only see the best part of people's lives, and you as someone who's doing that currently, you think, wow, all these people are doing this the whole time and I'm just sitting here, studying, not doing anything with my friends. Why can't I be more like them? This like negative and almost kind of toxic mindset leads to a decrease in mental health stability. And you also, a big topic, cyberbullying, right? Almost 37% of teens have been cyberbullied at some point in their lives. And the easiness of just hiding behind a screen and just bullying someone is one of the effects, is tied in with social media. So I think that's a big thing that we need to consider when talking about social media.
Yeah, so I agree with you that cyberbullying is a large issue and it needs to be dealt with, but about social media kind of showing this false image, I think that actually, like, I did some research and I found that studies show that teens reported higher levels of confidence with social media usage. And so I think that there's a huge stigma against social media that, oh no, it's ruining our brains. We have a lot of the older generation saying, social media is bad for you, don't use social media. And I think that that's really an outdated view on social media and its benefits. I think social media provides a beneficial release for youth. Here at MSJ, there's a huge problem with stress, and I think that social media helps address those problems because it gives people a break from their constant busy lives. And I think there's also a sense of camaraderie and relationship building on social media that helps people get through difficult times.
Yeah, definitely. How is using social media to raise awareness on issues like climate change and sexual assault beneficial or counterproductive?
I think this is totally beneficial because, as I said before, people are getting a voice. Minorities who usually are shut up and shut down are being able to voice their opinions.
Yeah.
And there's also some people who are not able to get out and vote and voice their opinions, but social media allows them to do this because of its instantaneous connection with the world around us. And I think that social media is very important in helping spread these movements, because as we've seen, once it's on social media, it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
Everyone has access to it, and I think that's really important. And it also helps in educating people. I think in this day and age, we're having more and more people show up and vote because they have more information on, for example, the presidential campaigns.
Yeah.
They know more about the candidates because on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, there's more and more information that's being put on these social media apps and websites to educate voters and to educate people on the political climate of today.
Yeah. And you were talking about how like hashtag Me Too and hashtag Black Lives Matter have gained so much awareness over social media. But I feel like simply posting a couple sentences or a photo, just like hashtag Black Lives Matter, isn't simply enough, to cause change. Real change is caused by people rallying, protesting, getting signatures by government officials for fighting what they want. A simple hashtag, it gets awareness, but it doesn't make actual like real world changes. Real world changes are made by people walking out and protesting for what they want.
So I totally agree with you on your point that change only comes when people actually get up and start doing something. But I think that these organized protests only happen with social media and with constant communication between different people. Take, for example, the global climate strikes that happened recently. All the information about those strikes was put on websites and social media apps for people to figure out and find their information on how to go out and start protesting, how to mobilize. And I think that social media gives people a channel to find that information and actually mobilize. So sometimes it does seem like, oh, it's just a hashtag, it's just someone saying a couple of words on social media, but it's a lot more than that because you're creating this community that's fighting against one certain cause, and that's really important in starting a movement and starting change.
Yeah, so like social media along with these protests together is what makes changes in the world. So I agree with you on that.
So, do you think that social media is a distraction or is it a much needed release?
So I think of social media as like a double-ended sword, right? So I remember reading that the average teen spends about 2.5 hours on social media. I'm not saying that you should not spend any time on social media, because moderation is key, but 2.5 hours seems like a bit excessive, right? Those 2.5 or like those 1.5 hours could be spent volunteering, going to like a community theater center to teach little kids, or even exercise, right? So spending all your time by looking at these numbers on how much likes or reposts talks about your self-worth could be put out into something else that is more beneficiary for your physical and mental health.
Yeah, so I think especially in the MSJ community, there's this, people really expect you to constantly be doing something and constantly be working towards a certain goal. And I think that very easily becomes tiring and tiresome for students, especially at MSJ, who are their parents, their peers, their teachers. They expect them to constantly be working and constantly be doing something. But I think that social media helps students take a break from all of that. And also it helps connect them with people who are suffering through similar problems. Take, for example, subtle curry traits. They're people who are able to talk about their heritage on this Facebook group and share funny memes.
Yeah.
And they're able to get a distraction from the constantly moving, busy life that they have to live.
That was our debate between Gokul Ramapriyan and Tavish Mohanti, two of our staff writers. Next up, my co-editor, Riya Chopra, will be continuing the conversation with our special guest, Mr. Bogman.
So, what are the most common ways you have seen social media being used, whether positive or negative?
Okay. Well, first off, I would say I don't get a chance to see students using social media all that often because I'm not linked to them on social media. And so I will see students using their phones, and I can suspect that they're on social media, but I definitely don't look over their shoulder to see what they're doing on it. So for that, there's a lot that I don't know. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess there. I think there's a lot of use of social media. I mean, it's before class, it's during class, it's after class. I see students walking around on campus with their phones open and their face down. They're not watching where they're going. I've literally seen students walk into somebody else or walk into a pole because they weren't watching where they're going, because they're texting someone or they're posting someone on Snapchat or they're Facebooking and doing something, right? So I think there's a big disconnect with people in their own isolated little worlds, interacting virtually as opposed to in reality.
Yeah. So do you think that social media hampers or promotes the development of social skills?
This is the biggest thing I think that's negative. It's absolutely crippling social skills. It is devastating to the development of social skills. And I've seen so many examples of this. Well, one way is how what people post on social media is very much an edited version of what goes on in their life. And so they can choose. They can edit out the things that they don't want people to see, and they can put forth things that they do want people to see. And part of the problem with that is when you edit out the things that you don't want people to see, you don't give a chance for someone to acknowledge your foibles, your flaws, your errors. You don't give them a chance to be your support system when that happens. You don't give yourself a chance to learn, wait a second, I just said something that's offensive. I better apologize. So these aspects of social development are vastly ignored now because so much of social development goes on from peer to peer, right? And I think that's absolutely critical. Social media doesn't take place in real time. You get a chance to stop and think about it. There's no spontaneity. You don't get to spontaneously see how someone reacts to you and you don't spontaneously react to them. It's thoughtfully done. Now, in a way, that's good because you can measure what you say, but I don't think responses are measured on social media. I think people turn their filters off and they respond wildly in ways that they would never do face to face. And that's where you see online bullying and stuff taking place. Social media is a reductive format. I hate Twitter. Twitter is the absolute worst of any social media platform because at just 140 characters, people are talking about important things, but all they can do is reduce their comments to the most simplistic, non-nuanced version of what they're writing about. And so I think it's highly destructive to the discourse that we engage in on a day-to-day basis about really important stuff, about human rights, civil rights, about voice and membership in community, and these things that are worth debating in very real terms are only getting short shrift because people have to keep their posts to whatever the attention span is in, a tweet, or even if it's a Facebook post. Even a Facebook post isn't limited to 140 characters. People don't want to read a 500-word essay. People want to engage in a substantive debate on that media platform.
Yeah. So going off that point you made, do you think that social media is beneficial in raising awareness for issues like climate change and like sexual assault through the Me Too movement?
Yeah, I really like that question because I think there is a positive. I absolutely think so. The changes that have taken place wouldn't nearly have taken place so quickly had it not been for the technology and the platforms that social media provides. So absolutely, but at the same time, there's a negative side to that. So yeah, I think in terms of social skills, social development, it's terrible. But in the way that information can be transferred and you can learn about things, it's possible. It's also possible to be misinformed about things. I just got into a little spat this afternoon with one of my friends who made a comment about a Berkeley professor. He called him the person a professor because that person had posted on a tweet some rather disparaging remarks about rural America, the people who live in the flyover states, and some rather disparaging comments about how backwards they are. And I noted that he called this person a professor. So I went to the UC Berkeley site where he was supposedly a professor, and the guy's not a professor. He's actually just a graduate student. Now, he probably does teach some classes, some low-level classes, but he's not given the role of being a professor. And the other aspect is, he might have tweeted some objectionable things. No one knows, at least there's been no information published that anything in his classroom, in his teaching, had anything to do with the objectionable things he said. So this reductive nature of social media and the harm that can take place because of misinformation, and then it gets spread, and it's very difficult to counteract that.
So expanding on the harm that social media can spread, do you think that social media plays in the spread of harmful trends like underage vaping and the opioid crisis?
Well, I think there's also a lot of information spread about the harmful effects of vaping and opioids. I think that's absolutely ubiquitous. It's out there. So what studies would have to show, I'm just talking from the seat of my pants. I would have no definitive way to articulate the relative strengths, weaknesses, the merits and demerits. I think maybe the cool factor of being sort of the rebel could still be perpetuated through social media, and that would be bad. At the same time, when you have students who are 18 years old who are dying because of lung disease and they shouldn't, they're presenting the lungs of a 70-year-old with smoking in his past. Wow, that's attention getting as well. So I think more studies need to be done in that regard.
And lastly, what do you think healthy social media usage looks like?
Moderate. I think the key to this is not to let your social media presence dominate a part of your life. I remember when I first got a Facebook page and I was connecting with friends that I hadn't seen in 30 years, and that's great. I cannot connect with those people the way I do with the friends that I interact with on a regular basis. I just would not want to have those Facebook friendships get superimposed on the personal interactive friendships that I have. I greatly value my time going out with my coworkers on a Friday to relax after work. And if instead of doing that, I just spent all my time sending off postings through various social media to my Facebook friends, that would be a very much more empty existence.
Yeah.
So I think the key is moderation. There's no reason that we shouldn't have this tool. A tool is nothing more than something you use to achieve a given purpose. So there's no reason that we shouldn't, use. Even Twitter has a use, right?
Yeah.
I hate it, but even it has a use. It's when, can I get political? It's when our president starts tweeting foreign policy ideas that it becomes a problem, right? So everything in moderation.
I want to thank Gokul, Ramapriyan, Tavish, Mohanti, and Mr. Bogman for joining us on the first installment of the Smokie podcast. Our background music is produced by Momo Music, and our show is edited by Riya, Chopra, and Gregory. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.